Hey, what's up everybody? It's Jason here, and in this video we're going to be talking about your G scale. Now, if you've never played this scale before, it can look intimidating because of all of the high notes and the F sharp, but I promise you this scale is a whole lot easier than it looks. So this video is going to be in 3 different levels. We're going to talk first to those of you who have never played your G scale before, and this is from the very beginning, you've never looked at this. Then we're going to talk about the second octave for those of you who have learned the first octave but not the second octave. And then for those of you who have both the octaves, we're going to work a few times through both of those at a faster tempo. So let's dive in with the first octave. Now, I want you to take a look at your scale sheet. The first thing you're going to notice is that we have an F sharp in the key signature, and that means 2 things. First off, you're going to want to play F sharp because that's the sharp in the key signature. So we want to make sure that all of our Fs are sharp. So we're going to use 2 and 3 for that. And also, because we have F sharp in the key signature, that means we do not have B flat. So we're going to watch out for B natural. So let's walk through our fingerings real quick. We've got G, 1 and 2, A, second valve, B natural, 2 and 4, C, 4th valve, D, 1 and 2, E natural, 2nd valve, F sharp, 2 and 3, and G, 1 and 2. Now, let's walk through these one note at a time. So here we go. We're going to do these as half notes. So we'll do G, A, B, C. So each note's going to be a half note. Here we go. 1, 2. Alright, so how did you do? If you had trouble with that, go back and figure out what the problem was. Maybe the problem is you're having trouble reading the notes, in which case, say the note names out loud and finger along. Maybe the problem you had was fingering, in which case, finger the notes before you play it again. Or maybe it was just too fast for you and you were making mistakes simply because I was going faster than you, in which case, don't try and do it again with me. Take it slower, work one note at a time, and then try to do it with me again. Now, the key here is you want to play it correctly as many times as possible. So try to avoid making mistakes. If you make a mistake, don't just go back and try to do it again. Do it differently. Do it slower, do it with just the fingerings. Whatever the problem was, isolate that problem and work on that. That way you're not practicing getting worse because you're increasing the number of times you played it wrong. You want to focus on increasing the number of times you played it correctly. Now, let's move on to those people who know how to play the first octave, and let's talk about the second. Now, before we get into the second octave, there are a few things we have to talk about. Obviously, we have to go up to a high G. Now, before you start freaking out about the high G, that G is not a high note. Yes, you heard me say that correctly. That is not a high note for tuba or for euphonium. And what I don't want for you to do is to start to psych yourself out by, oh my gosh, this is high, this is hard, because as soon as you start telling yourself that it's high or it's hard or you can't do it, you can't. So the thing I want you to focus on is it's not a hard note, it's not a high note, it's just new, right? So think about back to the beginning of the school year. Was F hard? Well, you might have thought so on the first day, but it wasn't really a hard note. It was just new. And once you figured it out, it wasn't hard at all. And the same thing can be true here. So I don't want you telling yourself that this is high or it's hard, because it's not. Now, let's talk about how to play high notes so that you don't get tripped up in trying to push higher. If you've never played above the staff or into the staff for tuba players, there are a few things we want to keep in mind. Now, if you've taken lessons with me before, you've heard me say this before. To change notes on the euphonium, you have to have three things. You have to change three things about the way you're playing with your air. That's the size of your air, the speed of your air, and the direction of your air. Now, let me dive a little deeper into that. What do I mean by size, speed, and direction of your air? Well, think about your mouthpiece containing several targets, and each note that we play has its own target. Now, our lowest note is going to be dead center in the mouthpiece. It's going to be our biggest target. It's going to take the biggest column of air. And my air takes up this entire target. And as I go higher, the target shrinks and it comes to the edge of the mouthpiece. So if I want to play that high G, I've got to focus my air to a tinier little target, and I have to hit exactly inside that target. And you notice my air column's going straight down compared to straight into the mouthpiece now. So I've moved where my target is to hit those notes. And if I go just simply from F to B flat, you should hear the air change. Did you hear it? One more time. You can tell if you're watching here that my air changes direction, right? And that's the same thing that we're going to do as we go higher. Each one of those targets has to come in. And if you're focusing on changing the target and you're manipulating the nozzle here, if you're manipulating your embouchure, those high notes will not be hard. Now, there's a couple different things I want you to listen for. If you start to sound thin or weak, or the note's just not speaking and kind of have this sound, that means you're not using enough air. And you've got to play with faster air or play louder. So let's dive into the top octave. We're going to go one note at a time, just like we did for the bottom octave. We're going to go in half notes. Let's dive in. And here we go. How'd you do? Now, again, if you found yourself struggling to keep up, if you were missing notes or you were missing fingerings, I want you to stop this video. Don't try again. You need to do it differently. Maybe you need to slow down and focus on one note at a time. Maybe you need to just work through the fingerings, or maybe you need to physically say the notes out loud. Whatever the case is, work on that one problem, fix that one problem, and then try again. Don't try repeatedly to keep up with me if you're making mistakes. Go do it differently, fix the mistakes, and do it correctly. That way you're practicing getting better, not practicing doing it wrong. All right, now let's put those two octaves together and let's go one note at a time from the bottom octave to the top octave and then back down. So we're going to do this in quarter notes now. And here we go. 1, 2. All right, again, how did you do? If you found yourself making mistakes, don't do it again. Go do it differently. Slow it down, work on your fingerings, work on the note names, whatever the problem was, work on that one problem, and then try again. All right, so let's try and go a little bit faster now. When you can actually play both octaves at the same tempo we just did, then try to go faster. Now, don't try to go faster if you haven't conquered going slow. If you cannot go slow, you cannot go fast. So here we go. We're going to do eighth notes, just like it says on the scale sheet. This is at 60 beats per minute. Here we go. 1, 2. Again, if you're making mistakes, don't try and go faster, slow it down. Fix your mistakes, isolate your problem areas, put it back into context, and then we can go faster. All right, here we go. One last time. This time we're going to do it at 80 beats per minute. This is eighth note at 80. And here we go. 1, 2. All right, there you go. Again, every stage of this needs to be practiced by itself. Do not let yourself make mistakes. Don't go faster than you're ready for. It is about building correct repetitions. Just like when you started to write your name in kindergarten, it was really sloppy, it was really big, and it was really slow. Each letter of your name was its own task, and the more you did it, the faster you got, and the better you got. And that's the same thing with our scales. Take it slow, work on playing it cleanly and good, with a good sound, with good articulation, with all the things that we've talked about in band. And then when you're ready and you can do it well, then go faster with it. So we're going to have more of these videos coming out this week. The next scale we're going to work on is your F scale. We'll have that coming out sometime later this week. So until then, practice your G scale, get it sounding good, because it's the scale you're going to use the most in auditions, and it's the best scale to have ready to go. So until then, make sure you're practicing every day, and I will see you in the next video.